So just recently, some big news came out of Busch Gardens, Tampa, where they recently sent out a survey for the pass holders and asked them what potential rides they would like to see come to Busch Gardens, Tampa. Now this doesn't mean that they will be getting a Giga Coaster, but the fact that they included it on this list is very intriguing, which has me wondering, what could Busch Gardens Williamsburg be planning in the very near future? What's going on, everyone? My name is Rich. This is Theme Park Motivation. I am super excited about this survey that they sent out to the pass holders from Busch Gardens Tampa Bay. I believe that this means big things are coming to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I'm going to tell you all about that. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. I really do appreciate every single like, and thanks so much for watching. As most people are well aware, Busch Gardens Tampa Bay, as well as Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and even some of the SeaWorld parks, tend to do things very similarly. And by this, I mean when one adds an attraction, let's say Busch Gardens Williamsburg, usually Busch Gardens Tampa Bay is not far behind with something very similar. This isn't always the case, but a good example of this would be Busch Gardens Tampa Bay adding Phoenix Rising for the 2024 season, and of course Busch Gardens Williamsburg adding Big Bad Wolf, Wolf's Revenge for 2025. And of course you've got Griffin, as well as SheiKra, Tigress, and Tempesto. Now I'm not saying they do exactly the same thing, always, but normally when one adds a massive attraction, the other park seems to follow. If you're unaware, Busch Gardens Williamsburg had plans to build a massive RMC, and they chose to go with a family invert. Sure, this is disappointing, but this RMC that they had plans to build would have been incredible. 220 feet, roughly, and it would have been a ground-up steel coaster, very similar to Air Force One. But these plans got scrapped, and I'm not going to get too much into the logistics of why it got scrapped, but I will say that it's pretty evident that RMC and United Parks are not on the greatest of terms. If this coaster would have been built, it quite honestly could have been the best RMC ever built. Now this isn't the first time that Busch Gardens Williamsburg scrapped a massive project like this. They also had plans to build a record-breaking Intamin launch coaster that would have stood at approximately 355 feet, but then COVID happened. But with that being said, this really raises the question, what's the plan for Busch Gardens Williamsburg moving forward? Let's say Busch Gardens Tampa plans to add this massive Giga Coaster. I honestly don't see Busch Gardens Williamsburg going this route. Not that parks haven't added a Giga Coaster when they have a Hyper Coaster, but I don't really think it's necessary. I think Busch Gardens Williamsburg has other plans. I don't see them adding a winged launch coaster, being the fact that King's Dominion just added one, and the fact that Busch Gardens Williamsburg already has 4 launch coasters. So what does that leave them with? Well, I think they need to get on the phone and call RMC up and possibly rework some deal and get a nice RMC built from the ground up. I could also see them working with mock rides and adding something very similar to Hyperia at Thorpe Park over in the UK. This would give them an outstanding lineup and offer something that no other park in the US has. Another great fit would be a mock extreme spinner, something very similar to Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. This would give the park a very unique attraction, especially to this area, as there's only one other mock extreme spinner in the United States. Another thing comes to mind when I think of some of the wants versus needs that this park has, and it seems that their water rides are getting on the older side. Escape from Pompeii has been prone to issues over the last few years, but I think it's pretty safe. If you haven't checked it out, I did a video recently on some of these attractions that are disappearing, and one of them would be the River Rapids rides. Busch Gardens Williamsburg is one of only a few parks that still has one. But what if they were to convert this, maybe do some updating and refurbishments to this ride? Possibly an elevator lift, something similar to Infinity Falls or Mystic River Falls, as these are both very popular rides at their parks. And of course their Shoot the Chute log ride is getting up there in age as well. Le Scoot has been around for a long time, and how cool would it be if they upgraded to something like Catapult Falls at SeaWorld San Antonio. This is a launching log flume with an elevator lift, and yes, it is an absolute blast. If you care to hear more about possible construction, different construction plans, I welcome everybody to check out bgwfans.com. Now they have a Facebook page, Instagram, as well as a YouTube channel, and they do an excellent job keeping everybody up to date with different things that are going on around Busch Gardens Williamsburg. In fact, they're pretty much the go-to source for anything Busch Gardens Williamsburg. There's also a massive need for some flat rides at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. With them getting rid of the Mock Tower a few years ago, nothing's quite filled the void. I'm not quite sure what we would see to replace the Mock Tower, but I imagine for 2026 there'll probably be some kind of flat ride. But I don't see them adding a massive coaster until 2027. But I will say one thing about Busch Gardens Williamsburg as well as Busch Gardens Tampa: they move quick. In fact, Busch Gardens Williamsburg has had a brand new coaster for the last 3 years. Pantheon, Dark Coaster, and now the Big Bad Wolf. Some of these plans were done during the middle of COVID, so I'm sure that has something to do with it, which is why I think it's going to be at least another year before we see a coaster. That being said, I would absolutely love to hear what everybody else thinks. Could you see a massive RMC at Busch Gardens Williamsburg? Do you think they can work their differences out and possibly give us an incredible RMC? Or do you think we'll see a flat ride for the 2026 season? And as far as 2027 goes, do you think it's going to be a massive coaster or possibly another water ride? I'd love to hear what everybody thinks. Thanks so much for watching. Hope everyone has a great day.